Hey Anthony, usually I start off the video with some sort of rebuttal to your response, but I think you hit on such a key issue there's no time for that this time around. I was really glad you decided to bring up the idea of sexism within music, as not only is there no question it's getting worse and worse over the years, but I think it's going to start presenting a serious danger to music as an art form. It seems to me that over the past 5 to 7 years, the way that people relate to and objectify female musicians has changed for the worse. Now, let's not kid ourselves and think that this is some sort of new trend. I mean, you can go back almost a century and see people like Josephine Baker, where it's the same idea being carried out in a slightly different way. Whether we're talking about Debbie Harry, the Bangles, Peggy Lee, Jewel, the list goes on. And it touches on nearly every single genre over the past 100 years of popular music. But to me, this shift occurred simply because of the brand new amount of access that people have to these performers. Sure, you may have had some lewd thoughts in the past about Lady Miss Kier from D-Light or Debbie Gibson or any of the Runaways. But aside from the thoughts in your head and maybe a creepy note in your journal, that's all there was. Nowadays, whether you're tweeting at them or sending them a message on Facebook or YouTube, or maybe you created a really creepy Tumblr dedicated to that person, the chances of them actually seeing your demented scrawl has infinitely increased. At the same time, we know how much people love that so-called anonymity of the internet, where there's still that perceived sense that somehow it won't come back to you because maybe you're not using your real name, or that somehow under these circumstances, it's okay to say what you're saying. But your question asked directly what I thought might happen if this continues, whether we're gonna see female musicians just have to learn to deal with it, or maybe we're gonna see less female musicians in general. As a content creator on the internet, we all know that there's a certain level of skin thickness that is necessary to do this job. I mean, not a week goes by that someone doesn't leave me a wonderful comment reminding me that I'm an overweight, slightly balding 30-something who needs to get a life. But to me, those are in a totally different league than these stalkerish, almost rape-laden comments that we're seeing come up more and more with female performers. Much like I don't think a woman walking down the street should have to just deal with some meathead whistling at her, I don't think it's logical or right for a female performer to have to consider these things just part of the job. Also, I really worry about where this sort of thing will end. I mean, if we let these sort of comments become socially acceptable, what's the next step? Will we see an increase in person-to-person incidents where we're actually having physical confrontations between these weirdos and the musicians they want? I know it may seem a bit overreaching, but think back a few years ago. I don't think anybody would have thought that these sort of comments would have been a reality. I mean, we're constantly fascinated by these things like whether or not Lady Gaga's a dude, or a few years ago, the internet had a field day wondering whether or not Britney Spears got a boob job. I can't remember many comments about Dave Grohl sporting a new brand of jeans that really showed off his package, or endless stories in the 70s about Robert Plant and his shirtless intrigue. To me, this is pretty much the ultimate double standard in music. It's not that people don't have thoughts like these about people like Drake or Justin Timberlake, but for whatever reason, publishing exactly what you'd like to do to those people is somehow off limits or taboo, and somehow not as socially acceptable as doing the exact same thing in reference to female performers. And I do worry that if we don't as a society step in and say, hey, that's not cool, you can't say that it does have the potential to get out of control. The last thing any of us want is for a potentially amazing talent to be dissuaded from sharing her art with the world due to nothing else but the inappropriate and frankly disturbing comments from a handful of people. But that change needs to start right now. It's like Rage Against the Machine said, if we don't take action now, we'll settle for nothing later. Okay, I feel better, a little bit. I needed to get that out of my system. So here's my question for you. Why is it that incidents like the one that happened to churches aren't getting as much run in the press as those that are happening within the world of pop music? Besides the overall level of notoriety, there seems to almost be this sexual double standard between female rock performers and female pop performers. Also, where do you see the solution to all of this if there is one? I'll see you at the end of the week.